Again, welcome to our, please feel free to put questions in the Q&A and vote for the top ones. They have been really, so panelists, what I would like for you to do real quickly is give us your name and your company. And then we actually didn't do this in biotech. So what I'd like for you to do is tell us a little bit about what your company does and what your job is. I guess, why don't we have, since Dr. Gardner is back with us again, why don't you start off?
Okay, my name is Vance Gardner. I'm the medical director of what's called HOAG Orthopedics. We're a research and education nonprofit that works with orthopedic surgeons. And we also, the education part is we have five fellows in clinical orthopedics that is in their 6th year. After medical school, you do 5 years of residency in orthopedic surgery, and then you do another year in fellowship. We have a spine surgery fellow, 2 joint replacement fellow, 1 sports medicine surgical fellow, and an economics fellow. And all those fellowship candidates, and when they are fellows for a year, need to do research. So we do what's called investigator-initiated research, meaning we develop our own protocols and we try to figure out what research we would do with the fellows. The faculty all do that too. We have faculty that teach the fellows in surgery. And then we do what's called sponsored research, which medical devices, which these companies that I see, Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic, are very, very good at. And so we in orthopedic surgery, we use a lot of medical devices. But in the last one, I talked about how medical devices are being paired with biotech products also. So that's why I was talking about that. But medical devices in orthopedic surgery are very common, and you need to have clinical research to do it, to eventually get what we call an approved product. We help do that.
Okay, wonderful. So on my screen, I'm going to start off off on the left. So Achilles, do you want to go?
I do. Thanks, Brian, for the introduction. And it's an honor to be here all. Achilles Young, and I work for a company called MEDTRONIC. I'm in the neurovascular division. They now call it the brain division. And what that division does is we manufacture and distribute and, of course, support devices for folks who have aneurysms, for folks who have strokes conditions. I happen to be a technical operations specialist. Right now, I'm a part of their PMO, and that stands for Project Management Office. And I help transfer some product lines from what we call high value regions to lower cost regions. And my background, once again, is about 29 years in medical device.
All right, wonderful. Michelle?
Hi, my name is Michelle Andrews. I work for Johnson & Johnson Medical Device. There are many medical device companies. I specifically work in the clinical operations related to cardiovascular devices. So my day-to-day, I am managing a clinical trial with a lot of cross-functional teams. Specifically, I am on an investigational product, which means it is not yet FDA approved. So my day-to-day is making sure kind of all the data is clean. You're looking to ensure that the product is safe and efficient. I think that pretty much sums up everything. Anything that I missed?
No, I don't think so. Thank you very much. Mark?
Hi, Brian. Good afternoon. Anyways, my name is Mark Kono. I'm the Vice President of Research and Development for Edwards Life Sciences. We're the global leader of companies doing structural heart therapies as well as critical care monitoring.
All right, wonderful. And Tamana?
Thank you for having me. I work for an organization called Lucira Health. We are located in the Bay Area, and I have accountability and responsibility for supply chain operations as well as quality. What we are working on right now is to be able to create both a point of care as well as an over-the-counter COVID test. One that allows you to get a result within 30 minutes, and you're able to do it from the comfort of your home eventually. So we are currently going through a clinical trial and hope to be able to get cleared for authorization here at some point in August. I've been fortunate to have worked for a lot of medical device companies in my past, so be it Boston Scientific, Medtronic, Covidien, and Danaher. So hope to bring some of that experience and knowledge to the panel today. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much. One of the questions that came up that we thought was really great was this one. What are the requirements to get into the industry? Because it feels like a degree is often not enough. Most employers want experience, yet we can't get experience if no one will give you a chance. I know a creative resume is a start, but what else can we do to improve our chances? Because even internships are difficult to obtain. Any thoughts? I know that's a big question, so if you want to answer part of it or peel it apart, that's fine.
If you already kind of know where you want to end up, which I know is hard thinking about it at this point, but I know that Johnson & Johnson, and they're not the only company, they do have a student portal within the careers webpage. And so they do things like internships, and you are completely correct in that they are competitive. You know, a lot of people do want to work for the company. But in terms of entry-level positions, I would start looking at places like hospitals, universities that are doing research, start at CROs or other organizations that kind of partner with larger sponsors is a good place to start. Me personally, my foot in the door was that I was at a university that really did focus on research. And so even at the university level, I was connecting with different professors or physicians that were already involved in research. And that kind of allows you to kind of get some hands-on experience. In a lot of cases, it may be unpaid, but it's still something that you can add to your resume. And then in terms of hospitals, obviously there's a lot of trials going on right now, just because in terms of cardiovascular, specifically anything related to stroke, there's a lot of diseases and disorders that haven't gone on hold just because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So those might be some other places that you might want to start, clinics, that type of thing.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I can add to that as well. This is Tamana. I think one of the things that's important is leveraging your network. And what I would say is being able to reach out to this panel, being able to reach out to others within your own network and understanding what the opportunities are, and be creative with what is given to you. Sometimes getting a foot into the organization is good enough for then you to be maybe starting off in a different role and then expanding and understanding where perhaps you may want to land up at the end of the day. It may take you down a different career path, but could also give you, opportunities to leverage new experiences as well if you ultimately get to the right point.
Okay. All right.
I think that I agree with everything the panelists have said so far. In addition, though, a lot of the big companies, Edwards Lifesciences included, support a lot of the community activities that are going on around the area. In fact, even like Vital Link events and things like that. So you will find a lot of engineering managers, people that are supervisors and managers of people are attending those events and helping participate and contribute to the worthy causes that are going on there. And so using those events to try to find people and avenues to get entry is also a good idea.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and I would say these industry panels are a great way as well, right, to help with your knowledge. Two things. Number one, when the career days come over, I went to UCLA, but I lived in Diamond Bar. So sometimes I just couldn't make the drive to LA because even back then it was really bad. I learned that there was a career day that was at Cal Poly Pomona. And so going there, that is a really big, and then I would just encourage the educators and all students, when you go to those, put your best foot forward, right? You think when you're at school, hey, I'm wearing my shorts, I'm wearing a top, I got my backpack on. We all know we're students. If there's a career day, right, go there and, be ready to be present yourself. A good handshake, good look in the eye, and I can't tell you how far that goes with making an impression on someone. So to me, that's something that's extremely concrete that you can. And then also just with social media, we have LinkedIn nowadays. Don't be afraid to make a link on some group or go like here in Orange County to the Med Device opportunity for college students. We have those nights where they can come in and just, once again, good eye contact, good handshake, a little bit sharp, and pass a business card, exchange information, and you never know what that will get into. Okay, thank you. That's great advice. So I'm going to go back to the second question we asked last time, which I think is a great one, which is, what does your day look like on the job?
Well, I can tell you that my day today looks much different than it did just 6 months ago. Being that almost everything is done from a virtual type of an environment. And so there's a lot more, you know, working from home, trying to help organize teams that you can't see face to face, and then trying to just continue to make progress on things where, you know, only 1 or 2 people can go into the office to do some type of test or some type of experiment. So it's been quite a change.
Yeah, I would imagine in research and development, I mean, isn't that, you know, fairly intensive in terms of needing a lab? I mean, it's not something that someone can just set up in their home, which is, you know, certainly something that we've heard from our teachers at the colleges, right? You know, how do we, you know, history, certainly I can teach remotely, but if I'm doing a chemistry lab, how do I do a lab? You know, how do students do labs at home?
So we have to organize lab people coming in at different times. And so having 6-foot separation between benches, you know, one team comes in on one day, another team comes in on another day, things of that nature take place. I can tell you that the software and algorithm guys really enjoy working from home though. They don't think that they need to come in at all. All the data analytics guys don't think that they need to come in at all, right? So that's quite a difference from the mechanical or actual physical people that need to, you know, handle stuff.
Sure. Okay.
I can talk a little bit from my environment.
Sure.
You know, I do have a number of employees that have to manufacture our product, right? And we have to be able to do clinical sampling and studies and evaluate it. And so we've really had to go through a massive transformation here in the short term in terms of how do we manufacture the product safely? What social distancing criteria do you put in place? How do you make sure your employees feel safe every day when they come into work? And I would tell you it's definitely a day full of Zoom calls, as well as just confirming people are safe, comfortable in their environment. And we've got the necessary support staff coming in to ensure that equipment is set up appropriately and we're able to meet our output requirements too. So it's definitely been a different challenge. But I think if you're contributing to the overall need, I think there's definitely a lot of motivation from a lot of people to make it work.
Okay. All right.
I can respond to that. Obviously, the day looks a lot different now that I'm working remotely in, you know, the short term, but pretty much. So the clinical trial that I'm managing, like I have mentioned, is investigational. It is global. And I do have a number of investigators that I need to meet with. So every day there are trainings that need to be done, obviously remotely. I am interfacing with my field team to make sure that they can get on site and actually monitor that data, or in case that hospital is not allowing on-site visits, they are monitoring remotely. But basically it's kind of a mix of different calls at the study level as well as at the site level. My trial is global, as I mentioned. So you know, every other week or so, I do have calls with, you know, my team in China or, you know, a team in Australia, just to kind of make sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of training everyone appropriately, and that's just in terms of logistics with the pandemic, whether it's supply chain or other issues that might come up. But definitely it is a huge team effort on everyone's part.
Yeah, I would have to agree with everyone just about this very strange time. Like right now, the gardener is making noise in the background, right? So I have to deal with things like that, or people having their dogs bark while we're talking. But besides that, from a professional level, what I would say to the panelists and to the audience here, it's really about, and what I learned over all this time is proactive communication. So wake up in the morning, for me, it's somewhere between 6 and 8. Right? And I'm on a call, but just jumping on a call cold doesn't make a lot of sense. So there has to be some proactive management, some pre-thought. Once I'm into my day, get done with a few meetings, then it's about preparing, you know, my deliverables. When I was on the production floor or in charge of operations or a team member in operations, it's actually kind of cool getting on the production floor where the action is and either looking at materials, looking at people, looking at the processes, looking at the finished product, or looking at what we call KPIs, key performance indicators. If I was no longer in charge of the production floor, then it really was about just making these connections throughout the day. And once again, doing it proactively. If I had to talk to my manager or my boss, I needed to make sure I was on point, right? So going through my network and making sure that presentation was going to answer all the questions necessary. If it was just for my peers, wanted to make sure that the communication was effective. And the way we would do that are PowerPoints, guys, and Excel spreadsheets, and then pulling reports out of wherever you pull them from. And then toward the end of the day, I always tried to wrap stuff up. You know, I had a pile of what I had to do. And then before you know it, there was a pile of, man, I didn't plan for that to happen. Where did that come from? And then organize that so that I could close out the effectively and then get ready for the next day. And for me, if I could take that big long-winded answer, really tell the team members here, you have to be a very good communicator. You can be a programmer, like Mr. Kono said, that's fine, or you can be a leader, is. But at the end of the day, the person who's most effective in the med device space is someone who is a good collaborator, like Mrs. Andrews said, and at the same time can adequately state where they stand. And if you do that, man, you'll have great success.
All right, wonderful.
You know, I just have a perspective. You know, I've seen this medical device industry grow into a huge industry. When I finished my spine surgery fellowship after, you know, medical school 6 years later, can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes. Yep. Sure can.
That was in 1986, and I'm looking at these names that you're all working for. Johnson & Johnson ended up buying a company called Sophomore Danek, which I mean, Johnson & Johnson bought DePuy. DePuy was a spine instrumentation company that merged with a Swiss instrumentation company called Synthese. That was Synthese and DePuy were the two companies that had spine surgery. Now it's Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson makes total joints look like you wouldn't believe through a company called DePuy also, which makes total joints. Those are all expanded. But in the meantime, there's a lot of small companies coming up, and they develop like the spine surgery I'm talking about, the implants I'm talking about. They were all small companies back in the 90s, all kind of developed the whole industry. And I know at Edwards, you've been pretty much the big industry anyway, but now you have this heart valve that you could put in it minimally invasively, the TAVR, and that's expanded. And I know you probably developed that mostly on your own, but maybe not. And then Medtronic. There's a company called Medtronic Spine, which was actually just another company that merged into Medtronic. So I'm just seeing all these companies develop so many new products, big companies, but little companies are coming in. So if you're out there wondering, when are you going to ever get to work for these big companies, you'll probably, especially in Orange County and Southern California in general, be able to find smaller medical device companies that are coming up with the latest and greatest development that in orthopedic surgery, cardiac, or whatever, neurovascular is going to be, I think, what some of these big companies are going to take up someday and buy them if they're not developing themselves. So we don't know what's coming up. That's what I'm saying next, but it's an exciting field. And you're all, if you want to do it, the curiosity is the key.
Wonderful. So one of the questions that just came up, I'm going to go ahead and go to it because I thought this was a great question, is what are some of the biggest challenges facing the medical device industry today?
So from my standpoint, you know, we isolated to really supply chain and operations. One of the biggest challenges we have is actually sourcing components. A lot of our supply chain and how we manage that supply chain historically has really been dependent on China. And a lot of our focus and our efforts nowadays in terms of a challenge is how are we going to effectively obtain product from countries and geographies that may no longer be up and running to the same level that we need, or have imposed higher tariffs or longer lead times to be able to get product over to us into the United States. So a lot of our efforts now is, as we're setting up manufacturing and scaling operation, is really thinking outside the box in terms of strategy so that we're able to secure supply as we move forward. And a lot of it is more US-centric type manufacturing. We're also looking at different geographies that don't have so many challenges. Mexico is a great area as well, the Dominican Republic. So from a challenge standpoint, it really is securing supply and being able to manufacture in areas where we're going to be able to sustain that, as well as the volumes that our country is going to need as well in the short term.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Kind of to Mana's point, as well as having issues in terms of, you know, supplying the devices, getting it where it needs to go in this time of the pandemic. It's also difficult with patients, trying to recruit patients. Most of these devices, at least the more ones that the patients either needs to be outpatient or inpatient, there are, there's a level of nervousness with actually going into a clinic or a hospital. So I think there are a lot of trials right now, mine included, that's being impacted by the pandemic and just in terms of trying to get patients. And obviously you can't prove that your device is safe and effective if you don't have patients. So I think right now a lot of companies are struggling with creative ways and trying to recruit, also creative ways in trying to make sure that we can kind of manage our data and our communications, and also just, the day-to-day that's going on in different hospitals and institutions. So we're working around it. It just means that we need to innovate more, right? It doesn't mean that everything's going to come to a standstill.
Okay, great. Okay, so one of the other questions, which tangential to this, but what are your predictions for the industry in terms of hiring and skills in the era of COVID, and what do you think the new normal is going to be?
I'll start off on that one first.
Sure.
That's an interesting question. So the era of COVID, for me personally, I'm not sure where things, I think we will, as a medical device industry, get back to something that's efficient, right? Working in the office, working in the labs, working with our suppliers, and working with operations. So I'm not too concerned about that. But one of the things that I really am seeing here is that individuals, they just have to continue to be adaptable, flexible. And I know that's a really broad term, but it truly means that find a way, to get the job done. And I think this new era is going to cause us to be able to use technology in different ways, not just Zoom, but who knows what's going to come up. And the corporations, the leadership are going to be really interested to hear these grassroots ideas of how we can use technology, use AI, really partner with our IT departments to be really efficient and make sure that we don't miss anything. One of the beauties of being connected together as human beings is that sometimes when you talk, you have those aha moments where you realize, whoa, we almost missed something. One of the things that I worry about in the PMO, right, the project management office, is make sure we don't miss something big. So we'll have ways that we'll get our data, sift it out, realize what's super relevant, super critical, make sure everyone's tapped into that, they close out their activities and move forward. So technology usage and adaptability.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add to Achilles' point is flexible, adaptable, but also really someone that's more of a collaborator. So making sure that, you are able, if it's really going to be a requirement for you to form connections without seeing people face to face, but basically use technology to do that, but also effectively be able to relate to people, collaborate with them, document, have your action items understood, send out report outs. That's the only way that we can continue to progress. And quite honestly, that's going to be a core requirement in terms of how hiring managers are also looking at people coming into the organizations too.
I agree with everything that's been said up until this point. And just thinking about the need to make improvements in terms of efficiency with technology, like we're kind of already seeing it now, and it is a hot field. So machine learning, the use of AI, the use of robotics. So these it creates job opportunities out there that didn't really exist 10 years ago, and it's something that should be considered. I know that, J&J is using a lot of, or investing a lot in robotics because, right, if you want to have fewer people in the room, if there's a way that the physician can remote in and actually operate that machinery in terms of a case, right, on a patient, then, it's needed. So I think we're seeing a lot more opportunities in terms of those fields and the relation to medical device. So yeah, robotics and machine learning for sure.
Okay. So one of the questions that just came up was, what was it specifically? What are some of the new technologies that seem the most promising in the age of COVID? So, you're talking about AI and machine learning and robotics. Anything else that anybody can think of in terms of new technology that is really going to kind of, fill a need that maybe wasn't there a year ago?
I think that as we get more into like remote monitoring and robotics and AI, cybersecurity has to come along with that, because your ability to keep that data stream secure and not tapped into or changed in any manner whatsoever is very, very important as we move forward from both a privacy standpoint as well as a security standpoint.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. I've heard cybersecurity experts talk about, what happens if someone breaks into somebody's, wireless pacemaker and decides to, monkey around with it. So, Michelle, were you going to say something?
Again, with technology, the augmented reality and virtual reality, it's often used for in training environments. It's used for police officers, it's used for physicians in different ways. So again, I think that'll be utilized a lot more, just because now that we have this global network, you're going to have physicians that kind of want to meet up and collaborate from across the world. And in some cases, flight travel to be there in person, isn't an option.
I think this one last one, and maybe I would also throw it to Dr. Gardner, but if you think about telemedicine and wearables, and I just think that's going to be amazing, because think about it. If you want to get something elective done, I needed something done for my knee. I had to postpone it, 2 weeks. But if that information was somehow, I could just get that to the doctor, man, we could have just talked about it. He could have had some data, maybe off of my Fitbit, I don't know what. But it seems to me that there's an opportunity for that to happen. So for anyone who's really hands-on or electromechanical, man, get into sensors, because we have sensors that are just so small that do these amazing things, and RFIDs now. So I haven't done a lot of research on it myself, just read articles here and there, but I think that's going to be a wave. And I wanted to know what Dr. Gardner thought about that.
Well, thank you. Yes, in orthopedics, wearables are, obviously we know about the Fitbit, but we're doing research with wearables. One of the, like physical therapists actually can work with a patient through the wearable, through a mobile a phone, but then there's wearable other kind of protocols and things. And one of the things is now they can bill, because with COVID-19, that was one of the problems with all this telemedicine, is that actually the physician or whoever it was who was the healthcare practitioner was not able to bill. So these are new rules that have come through with Medicare, and I think that's going to open it up. In technology and orthopedics, minimally invasive has really improved significantly. Small incisions, navigation, AI has kind of come in a little bit. So there's a lot of newer technologies that are starting to improve patients to the point where a total knee, like you're maybe talking about, can go home. The patient can have total knee in the morning and go home that afternoon. When I was doing total knees back as a resident, the patient was in the hospital about 10 days. So this is how things have changed, and it's all through technology, because the surgery itself has not improved as significant as the technology around it. The pain management, all sorts of new anesthetic techniques that allow patients to not even need opioids. So, but I think also what you were talking about with the telemedicine, that's going to improve the patient care part. But I would say one of the most important qualities that anybody can have still is compassion and a good communication skills. Our research coordinators are doing e-consents right now. And it's not easy to be explaining a big project on the phone and then they sign electronic consent. But we were able to adapt as a research organization doing telemedicine also.
All right, wonderful. A lot of great information. So that was a great question. So kind of pivoting off of some of that, you were talking about communication and collaboration. One thing that comes up often from hiring managers is, that there are soft skills that they're not seeing in some of their candidates, some of the people coming into their fields. So, the question for the panelists is, what are the non-technical skills? What soft skills are you seeing that are lacking that our participants can be working on?
A lot of the work now that's being done in the medical device world requires really good team collaboration, and it's gone are the days when you could have one really brilliant guy that didn't get along with, or girl who didn't get along with anybody, but because his idea was so good, everything else kind of flowed behind it and had to follow it. Those days are kind of gone away, right? And now it's the diversity of the input is what's really valued, and the ability for the team to collaborate really well. And so getting people in that can see that, as well as, you know, mold that into the culture of the organization, is really, really important for us, at least in our terms, in terms of when we're hiring.
So one common question that we hear from students is, you know, in terms of, and this goes back a little bit to the first question, but how do they network? And how do they find mentors in the medical device field?
So I can take that one.
Sure.
I think to get us started. So I think there's lots of different networking avenues that are there. We talked a little bit about LinkedIn as being an opportunity to reach out to folks, but there's also a lot of different organizations that are out there. Just in general, like I know that I have a colleague who's associated with a women's networking group specifically in the medical device arena. And that group, if you reach out, they're very good about partnering you with the appropriate mentors. There's a small, you know, annual membership fee that has to be paid. But I think ultimately there are multiple different avenues that I think this whole group is, you know, I'd be willing to share just different links for, you know, all the students in terms of where they can access or avenue those places to be able to understand how best to get a hold of folks. The one thing though that I will say is there's a first step to network, right? Identify somebody that you want to partner with, but then the next step is really what questions do you want to ask that person, and be very well prepared with what are you looking out of that engagement, right? What is it that you want? What are the key pieces of information that are of value? And what are you looking to ask that person to provide you in the short term and long term as well? So making sure that you are fully prepared once that link is set up is also really important for you.
So I'm a part of the Med Device Alliance. That's the large one here in Orange County. And then there's a few things that are incubator sites. One of them is Cove over at UCI. Then I'm a part of a group called DocMD, and these are individuals who are in transition, but med device professionals. So those are three. And then I'm an avid reader. So I would say, maybe going on Mr. Kono's part a little bit, the students that come out now, and then the educators, there's this idea that, hey, what information is out there for me? Bring it to me. I think a piece of it we have to go get. And with the internet now, for example, if you're interested in J&J, wow, you can really go on the J&J site, look under for an hour, just look under careers. You can go on the Medtronic website and just look under product and see what interests you. I remember doing this when I was coming up, going through school. I was a big fan of automotive stuff. And I didn't have the internet back then, but I would go to car dealerships and I would get the brochures on Mustangs, and I would get the brochures on, at the time, you know, there was these souped up cars called a Supra, who they're reinventing now. But anyway, have that curiosity and go out and get the info. And the universe just has a way of, wow, someone's interested in me, and it will connect you. Yeah.
I think some of the research associations were already mentioned. I'm a member of SOCRA, the Society of Clinical Research Associates, and they do have local chapters, they do have local meetings. There is an annual fee affiliated with that. But just in general, there are a lot of industry conferences that you can attend, and a bunch of those are now available virtually. And you can just kind of attend as a participant. You don't necessarily have to be a member of any specific organization. And that's nationwide. So you could just probably do a search of conferences that may interest you is an option. And then once you get to the point where you're actually in an organization, a lot of companies actually offer mentorship programs. So I'm in a mentorship program through J&J. It was, just simple application. I applied. So I ended up being partnered both with a mentor and a mentee. So once you kind of get your foot in the door, it creates more opportunities.
For me, the only one that I would add to that is Octane.
Okay.
which is the Orange County Technology Action Network, I believe. Lots of entrepreneuring, very small startups are there, pitching ideas, right? There's usually a board that is more based with companies like Edwards and Medtronic and J&J that sit on the board for reviews and panels and pitches.
Okay. Do any of you know, are there any LinkedIn groups that are, really helpful or important for students to join, that they would be able to join? I mean, I would imagine that most of the groups, like SOCRA probably have a LinkedIn group that they could be a part of. But I didn't know if there was anything specific. I know certainly for, Octane is a local organization. And, if there was something local that students might want to make sure that they are participating in.
Yeah, in LinkedIn, there's lots of heart valve therapy, one's structural heart, one's 3D printing, one's, there are just a lot of organizations there that you can follow as well.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Brian, just one quick one. Once again, this is just my perspective, but for the students, what is the grade range again? Are we talking from freshman all the way to senior?
So we have students joining us from freshman in high school all the way through community college. And actually, I think we might have even had a couple of students who were in 4 years as well.
Interesting. Okay, so two things. Number one, this is what I wish someone would have told me when I was younger. If you can join your local toastmasters, I think that's awesome. So that I know that's not med device specific, but once again, communication, confidence. See what you can do with that. And of course, if you're younger, right, check with your parents and all that good stuff. But then number two, for the educators, the Med Device Alliance, if anyone is interested, get a hold of me and I can direct you over there, because I think it would be awesome for someone who is really passionate about making that connection. That's one of the best places to be, to meet folks from all different levels in the med device industry. So those are my two.
So I love that question. I'm now going to use that for the rest of you. So you can blame Achilles for this. What do you wish someone had told you when you were younger? Tamana, why don't you go? And the rest of you be thinking about this, because it's coming to all of you, because I think this is a great question.
Thanks, Achilles. Appreciate putting us all on. I think one of the things that I wish people would have told me, I'm fumbling a little bit here, but I think what's important is your career doesn't always take a typical path. And what I came into my first job thinking I was going to go up a certain ladder, and I took a lot of detours along the way. And I think those detours were incredibly helpful and taught me a lot. And I wish someone had told me it is a broad range of experiences that really make you a successful individual in how you define success. But I really wish somebody would have told me that. Be open to opportunities, welcome things that are outside of your comfort zone, because it will allow you to become a much better, well-rounded person down the road.
All right, wonderful. Michelle, you're up next.
Oh, on the spot. Okay. So I guess two things. One, I wish that it was emphasized, if you have any study abroad opportunities, definitely go for it, or opportunities to travel elsewhere in the US, whether it's an internship or other program. I think that's really important. It's important to kind of get away from your home space and allow yourself to kind of develop as an individual. The second thing I will say, kind of speaking, to Mana's point, yes. So some of my colleagues, I work with someone who got their degree in dance. I have another colleague who ended up with international business relations. Your background, when you find yourself in research, everybody is coming from a different space, and it's completely acceptable. I think it kind of provides strength to any given team, and it'll be fully appreciated. My day-to-day, I am interacting with people from biostats, data management. So don't just think, well, if I'm going to go into research, then I have to have a research-related degree. That's not the case. And in most cases, you can kind of work your way up from an entry-level position. So, find the right company, and they will be willing to mentor you and will be willing to train you. In a lot of cases, once you get your foot in the door, you can also, go on to get a higher college degree, and the company will reimburse you to go to school. So be creative when you're thinking about what you need in order to get into that company, because in some cases, they are willing to develop the skills needed so that you can kind of rise up in the ranks.
Wonderful. Dr. Gardner?
You know, again, it was hard for me to hear your question. It was kind of.
Oh, what do you wish someone had told you when you were younger? What do you wish someone had told you when you were younger?
Huh. I wasn't sure that was so that's the question. What did I think? Well, I started in marine biology and it ended up in spine surgery. So I don't know when this all changed, but I don't think I've been blessed.
Okay.
So I had really not much to do about it either.
Okay. All right. Mark, what about you?
Well, first I have to say, when I was younger, dinosaurs were roaming the earth. So let's remember that, right? It was over 40 years I've been working in the industry. So that I just want to make sure everyone understands that. For me, I would say that to be able to tell people that vulnerability is okay, right? Experiences shape your life as well as why you make decisions going forward. And your ability to communicate and express that to people will only make your connections that much better and much easier going forward. And so don't think you need to hold everything inside, that you need to be stoic, right? That having failures or having setbacks is a bad thing, right? All of those make who you are today, and they shape how you take things going forward.
Sure. All right. So I'll keep myself on the spot because I only think it's fair that I answer this one as well. And I've had a very circuitous career as well. I started out as an intern at a TV station, and then I moved into television sales and marketing and spent some time working for some different advertising and marketing companies. And then I ran a college campus, and now I'm running a nonprofit. So I've kind of been all over the place. But one of the things I wish someone had told me early on was that my title and my W-2 were less important than that I loved what I was doing. And, I can say that, the television industry for a while was a great place to work, but ultimately at the end of the day, I wasn't terribly happy at what I was doing. And so I'm a much happier person now that I am doing something that speaks to my values. So I think that is something that I wish someone had told me early on. So we've got about 5 more minutes, and I had another question that we actually didn't ask in the last one, but that I thought is appropriate, that came up came from some of our students, which was, what's an effective way to keep yourself focused and constantly learning in the medical device field?
Well, I'll take this one on being in R&D, right? You really need an innate curiosity and a drive to, want to understand and want to figure things out, right? And by having that, it doesn't matter whether it's specifically to the problem you're trying to solve or what you're doing today. It's just in general, right? That comes across and will help you find the new things that you weren't thinking you would, right? And it's a great thing to have.
So I was a spine surgeon, but 20 years ago, I stopped being a spine surgeon, and for health reasons. And you have to sometimes reinvent yourself. And the only thing that can do that, you can have patience, humility, but I think we've all talked about it, curiosity, which makes you want to start studying something new. And so now I'm a medical director of a nonprofit, kind of like what you're talking about, Brian, on all sorts of places and done things. But the reinvention is kind of fun eventually. Not so great initially, especially if you have to do it. But it does allow you to start developing new skills that you would have never had in the past because you're on one line direction. And instead of going somewhere else, which life sometimes takes you, you then start to be able to hone those skills. And that takes, like you're talking, Mark and Achilles and Michelle and Tamina. you really got to study, you got to read, and you got to start learning. And curiosity makes it just be thankful if you have curiosity, because I think that's many times big part of it.
Yeah, great. Michelle, you were going to say something?
Oh, just work-life balance and adaptability. I know it's been kind of talked about, but you know, the company had like a meeting yesterday and they talked about the importance of work-life balance. So, you know, whether you start your day with like a workout or at least kind of take that 15 minutes to go for a walk, you're not going to be able to focus like 10 hours straight. It's just not, it's not physically possible. And we can't multitask, right? It's just more so you can change your attention kind of quicker. So yeah, I would say that's kind of important. And then in terms of adaptability, the industry is changing so much that regulation is changing. And so you kind of have to adapt. You can't want to stay static within the med device industry just because there is so much change. And we are constantly kind of grappling with things and putting out fires, trying to, you know, change with the field. In some cases we're behind, in some cases we're ahead, but there's going to be that constant flux.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say is read. And it's really, whether it's reading publications, reading the newspaper, right? Just get yourself educated on a variety of different topics that are of interest to you. And I think you'll start to slowly learn how themes start to intervene together, and it starts to make a lot more sense. So I think that's what I've really enjoyed doing, is starting to connect the dots through all the different information that you start to learn and read through it.
Okay. Wonderful.
Sure, I agree with what everyone said. My only 2 cents to it is we're all in the medical device space, or I would say the majority of people I've met is because they really do like helping people. So keep that in mind, right? If you enter the space is your grandmother, your dad, your brother, your sister, or friend, everyone's going to have help sometime. And it's just an honor to be in this particular field, knowing that in some way we helped someone to get better.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you all very, very much. This has been very informative and a lot of great information. On behalf of Santa Ana College and our student participants, we owe you a debt of gratitude. So thank you very much. At this point, I would ask you to turn off your cameras, and we are now going to turn it back over to Santa Ana College to talk to us a little bit about their medical device program. And so, Raquel, are you ready? All right, so joining us now is Raquel Ramirez from Santa Ana College, and she is going to speak to us briefly about the medical device program there. It's all yours.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you to all the panelists that talked to all of our students. Yeah, so I just want to share quickly with you guys a little bit about our medical devices certificate that we offer at Santa Ana College. I don't know if you could help me bring up the slide, Dennis, slide number 3. But while he's doing that, I just want to say that the certificate at Santa Ana College is preparing our students for quality assurance in the medical devices field. It's a 7-class certificate that the students would take in preparation for that. And what it does really is prepares you to be able to transition onto beginning level employment in the medical device industry as a medical device assembler, an inspector, or a repairer of these devices. So as many of our panelists shared during their time, it is very important to know that if this is a field that you're truly interested in and you want to grow in, you can go in, you know, be creative in the way that you're gonna enter the field, and it doesn't necessarily have to be entering with a position that you wish to build up to, because usually that ends up happening on its own anyway. So I just want to give you that as some food for thought to think it over, and if you're interested, hopefully you will check it out. But anyway, so the image on the screen is detailing you the 7 courses that are included in our medical device quality assurance certificate at Santa Ana College, all which are part of the manufacturing technology department, with our college. So I don't think you can see it here, but I'll post it on the chat. If you guys want to learn more about what sort of certificates and degrees are offered through our manufacturing technology department, you can always visit their website, just like with our biotech program. And I'll also type in some of our faculty member emails in case you have any questions, you want to chat with someone about what we can do to serve you with that. And lastly, Dennis, if you can help me go to the slide number 2, please. Thank you. I just want to leave you all with this last thought, or resource actually. So in Orange County, students have access to a great resource to be able to learn more about the different pathways under CTE, or what we at the college call career education. So different fields, and I've listed them here, but advanced transportation, biotechnology, which we talked about today, business entrepreneurship, digital media arts, energy, construction, utilities, nursing, ICT, retail, hospitality, tourism, all that. You can go on and check more information about in the website that is detailed in this slide, and which is talentedcareerpathways.org. And it's a really cool resource, very comprehensive resource, not only giving you background information on what careers you can have with any of these fields or pathways, I'm sorry, but also providing you with a map of Orange County that details where the industries are at, where the colleges are at, and just really give you that visual context of where the market is, where you can get internships, etc., and as well as student testimonials. So really encourage you guys to take advantage of this resource. Really great resource. So talentedcareerpathways.org. And that's it for me. Thank you all so much for being here today. Really appreciate your time.